K-Man Daily Weather is presented by Fox Business Systems. How much does downtime cost you and your business? Don't let another second go by. Call Fox Business Systems at 776-1452.
Breezy conditions and sunny skies, your forecast for the area today. 25-mile-an-hour winds out of the south as we warm to a high of 67 on this Friday in the Manhattan area. Clear 45 overnight, then a slight chance of an afternoon shower. Breezy conditions again, and 68 for Saturday. Chance of rain developing Sunday afternoon. Good chance Sunday night with a surety of rain on Monday. And temperatures back into the 40s for highs by midweek.
Digging deeper into the conversations, trends, and ideas impacting Manhattan and the Flint Hills. This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio, KMAN.
Well, a couple of years ago, in the fall of 2022, there was a community meeting at the fire station in Manhattan at Kimball and Denison. It was called by the city government to quell some concerns over a trial balloon that had been floated by the city staff that would cut the Parks and Recreation Department budget. I remember that meeting because they asked me to moderate that conversation, and it was everything you would expect. Members of the community on offense, the city staff on defense, a lot of concern about the potential for losing services related to Parks and Recreation. The upshot was a renewed emphasis on the importance of Parks and Rec as it connects to economic growth. A new layer of conversation and ideas have surfaced since that meeting. And we will have that conversation today with two people who have been deeply involved with it. Aaron Stewart is a city employee. He is director of Parks and Rec for the city. Came to town about 6 months after that meeting. He brings with him a wealth of experience and creativity. Aaron, welcome.
Thank you.
Gail Urban is a local certified financial planner and chairs a new philanthropic foundation, which was created expressly to raise money from the community to augment the city budget line item for Parks and Rec. And in all transparency, I need to say that Gail and I are alumna of the Leadership Manhattan class of 2004. Gail, when I look at the calendar, I see that we only have about a month and a week yet to plan our 20th reunion banquet.
We need to get on that.
Is that you or me?
I think you're in charge of planning that, along with Thanksgiving dinner.
Fair enough. We'll get right on that after this conversation. Welcome, Gail. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Let's let these two individuals talk a little bit about themselves. We can't assume that everyone who is listening is fluent on what brings them to the table. So, Gail, let's start with you. Tell us about you and what brings you to this topic.
Sure. My day job is, as you said, I'm a certified financial planner. I own a company called Amicus Wealth Partners, but that's how I make a living with my family. My passion, though, is kids, and probably over the last 26 years, I guess, that I've lived in the Manhattan community, not only have we raised our own kids, which there are 4 of them, and they have all participated in Parks and Recreation in one manner or another over the years, so that those programs hold a special place in my heart. Probably the real community involvement, though, came at one day. I was standing on a court in Gardner, Kansas, with another teacher, and we were coaching volleyball, and she was the real coach. I just managed parents mostly. But
it's a full-time job.
Yeah, it was a full-time job. But we're standing in a beautiful facility, and she looked over and said, "Why can't we have a facility like this? We couldn't even host any volleyball in our community because there was no place to do that." And I said, I'm gonna gather a few people and see if we can't get something done about that. Those discussions led to conversations about what some people in the community, if they know Parks and Rec history, know as the Fieldhouse Project. And so it was really just a group of community leaders creating community discussion and creating enough conversation in the community to create a little controversy which we needed to have the conversation. Ultimately, those conversations led to the development of the quarter-cent sales tax that we have in place, the quality of life quarter-cent sales tax, which was passed, and in that project funded the 2 recreation centers that we currently enjoy, the Anthony and Eisenhower Recreation Centers, and is also in progress of getting ready to fund, or the sales tax funds,
Sure.
the SECO project that is just getting started, and will be enjoying that over the next couple of years.
Gail Urban, a volunteer, clearly fluent and deeply involved in all things Parks and Rec. Aaron Stewart does this for a living. He is a professional Parks and Rec supervisor. Aaron, give us your 101.
Well, obviously, I've had this as part of my career for the past 20 years. A lot of people know this, but what you may not know is I am born and raised in Manhattan. I grew up in the Parks and Rec system here at the time when it was probably the best in the state. And I ended up doing my internship here and working for Manhattan Parks and Rec in the early 2000s that, again, we were leading the edge, especially with things like youth baseball, and USSSA had just started a kind of a baseball wing, and that's really what kind of helped drive me. It's also a family business. That Gardner facility that Gail's talking about, my brother was actually the director in Gardner, and he's the director of Johnson County. So you can see this is a family thing.
It doesn't take long for the circles to get small in Kansas.
It doesn't. And so he was doing this well before I was, when I was in college, and I was like, man, you get to go deal with sports all day. And at the time, I was a college football player, and I was like, this looks fun. And little did I know how much desk work there would be, but it got me into the field, and really it comes back to about serving a community and making your community healthier, more vibrant, more economically prosperous. So I've been doing this. I worked my way up the ladder and developed a little bit of a niche for myself, which is I tend to repair organizations that have had financial troubles, that are maybe need some work with the culture. And so I've spent a lot of time out in Colorado learning the ropes of how Parks and Rec has done really, really well. And then ventured back to Kansas because I wanted to raise my boys in Kansas, and was out in Garden City, rebuilt their rec commission that eventually merged to a Parks and Rec department. And the conference in 2023, I got inundated with people asking if I was going to apply for this position. And it was an opportunity to come home. My parents still live here. So, and I really do think I could help with the situation that we've been talking about. So.
Fair enough. Aaron Stewart is Director of Parks and Recreation for the City of Manhattan. He is joined by Gail Urban. Gail is a certified financial planner by day, and by evening and during her spare time volunteers as chair of a foundation, a philanthropic arm it is a sort of a subset of the Greater Manhattan Community Foundation. But Gail, let's talk about that foundation. That was created directly as a result of the conversations that were underway here a couple of years ago. What's the mission and what's the goal?
Well, that's a great question, Mike. Several years ago, as I'm also a solid chamber volunteer and supporter, we were having conversations at the chamber about city budget and responsible city budget. And so that led to some conversations of, how Parks and Rec is funded, how Parks and Rec is not funded, and how Parks and Rec, because it is a large department of the city and has somewhat limited revenue sources, or Aaron's going to fix that, but he can talk about that in a few minutes. But the having conversations about city budget was really what led to conversations about why don't we have a Parks and Rec foundation. One of the goals of the foundation is to make sure that every child and every person really has the opportunity to participate in Parks and Rec programming. The way that our Parks and Rec programs are currently structured and our current scholarship program is structured, that really wasn't the case. The scholarship program at the city has been there for many years. It just hasn't been well communicated and well structured. They also didn't have a charitable arm to be able to receive those funds and, frankly, hold the city very accountable to those funds and make sure that funds get directed appropriately. So that's the primary job of the foundation, is to create some accountability and also some additional support for those items that really aren't taxpayer funded.
We will get into more of the specifics of the foundation and how you're doing with raising funding and how that will fit into future plans as well. Our guests are Gail Urban. She is a certified financial planner, Amicus Wealth Planning here in Manhattan, and also serves as chair of the volunteer philanthropic foundation arm that raises money specifically to augment Parks and Rec for the city. Aaron Stewart is also with us. He is the director of Parks and Recreation for the City of Manhattan. We'll get into more of the conversation about what it looks like. We'll talk talk about indoor water, too, so please stay with us. The conversation will continue. The program is called Within Reason. I am your host, Mike Matson, and you are listening to us on News Radio KMAN.
This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio KMAN.
You've probably heard our Sugar Creek Country Store jingle.
You'll always find a smile at Sugar Creek.
We sing about it because it's true. Stop by Sugar Creek Country Store in St. Mary's and you'll be smiling and singing about the delicious handmade deli sandwiches, tasty homemade soups, baked goods, and bulk foods too. See it all by visiting sugarcreekcountrystore.com. Or better yet, come and see us at Sugar Creek Country Store in St. Mary's.
You'll always find a smile at Sugar Creek.
You guys are really good.
At Stormontville Health, our patients are our neighbors and our communities are home.
We invest in your health and our community by bringing high-quality healthcare closer to home. From our Wamego Clinic to our new campus in Manhattan and the Flint Hills Hospital in Junction City. Our partnerships with organizations like the Mayo Clinic and the Children's Miracle Network bring top-notch expertise to our region. We take pride in local collaboration to stay connected to our communities. Visit stormontvale.org.
Stormontville Health, high-quality care closer to home.
American Family Insurance.
As your American Family Insurance agent in Manhattan, I'm looking out for what matters to you. This is Rob Wild, agency owner at Wild & Associates LLC, located at 1601 Points. Call or stop in and let's talk. Whether it's your home, auto, business, farm, or life, see how we can help protect what matters the most to you. Rob Wild, Wild & Associates LLC.
American Family Mutual Insurance Company, SI, and its operating company, 6000 American Parkway, Madison, Wisconsin.
Orthopedic and Sports Medicine Center offers innovative, cutting-edge physical therapy, from blood flow restriction rehabilitation, dry needling, DARI-A biochemical movement analysis, fall prevention, and return to sport. OSMC Physical Therapy has over 75 years of combined treatment experience and deliver a successful and positive outcome while making the rehabilitation process pleasant and enjoyable. At Orthopedic and Sports Medicine Physical Therapy, no referrals are needed to schedule your therapy appointment. For more information, visit us at kansasortho.com.
The Ramsey Show.
Up to 50% of American families are paying their adult children's bills to an average of $1,482 a month. Wow. I've never seen it like this. 25% of millennials, their parents are paying their house payment, their rent, or they're living in their basement. You pay your kids' bills. Psychologists call that enabling. As a matter of fact, enabling is quite the opposite of loving.
Go from paycheck to purpose with The Ramsey Show. Weekdays 10 to 1 on News Radio KMAN. KMAN's Morning News. Tomorrow morning 6 to 9. This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio KMAN.
Our title sponsors are Stormontvale Health, McCown Gordon Construction, and the Trust Company. The program is called Within Reason. You're listening to us on News Radio KMAN. We're also live streaming on YouTube. Go to that website and search for News Radio KMAN to see our shining, smiling faces. We're recording the audio of this. It will be posted as a podcast on the KMAN website and wherever you would like to find your podcast. Should be available there as well. Our guests are Gail Urban. She is a certified financial planner with Amicus Wealth Partners here in Manhattan and chairs the Manhattan Community Foundation Parks and Rec.
Manhattan Community, I'm sorry, now I'm saying
it's
it wrong.
A mouthful.
Manhattan Parks and Rec Foundation.
Thank you, which is a philanthropic arm aimed to augment the funding that comes from the city for Parks and Rec. We're also joined by Aaron Stewart, who manages Parks and Rec for the municipal government. Aaron, talk to us about Move MHK.
Yeah, so Move MHK was an initiative that I was tasked with when I got here, and it was a full comprehensive Parks and Recreation master plan. And I'm sure a lot of people heard about the indoor water piece of that, which I know we'll talk about here later. But really, that is a extremely comprehensive document that explores both external initiatives as well as internal initiatives. And so part of what we try to do is assess everything we had, where are we located as far as nationally benchmarking, and then make some recommendations out of that so we can move ourselves forward. And there was kind of two external, what I call external goals, and two internal goals. Now this document covers the next 10 to 20 years, so it's very comprehensive. It's a fairly easy read if you just read the chapters. When you get into the appendices, that that document's about 700 pages. So very valuable to us. We're continuing that work. And we've started doing things like talking about cost recovery policy, the scholarship policy, some of these initiatives that are outlined in there. It does identify just what we need to repair. We did a assessment on every park and facility we have. So
when you think about the Move MHK plan, Gail, and you think about the mission and goal of the foundation, right? You're able now, it would seem to me, for the first time to be able to sort of plan together with respect to how the funds from the foundation and what you will raise in the future might be able to help augment some of the opportunities that Erin discusses. Is that
absolutely
the plan?
Yes. We have three primary focuses at the moment. One of them is our special populations. We realize that is a population that the cost recovery system would be damaging to. Folks who are disabled are often financially disadvantaged, so we want to make sure that those programs remain at a very minimal cost. So our goal is to raise $10,000 a year to not only support the current programs that are in place for our special populations, but to also expand those programs. And we've been very successful so far in getting that done and have already seen some exciting things. I'll let Erin talk about the programming that has been added to the special populations programs. So we're excited about that.
Erin, give us a sense of the Parks and Rec budget as it fits into the entire city budget here, and then also maybe how that compares with some other communities that you've been involved with.
So there are a couple different initiatives. There are some specialty funds that are, as the sales tax that was mentioned earlier, that's building certain things. Really what people focus on, and probably what created the meeting at the fire station, was the general fund. And so we're in the general fund, as along with fire, community development, HR, finance, all city manager's office. Those are all funded out of the general fund. So we have this enormous budget as a city, but it all relates back to the general fund. Our portion of that, give or take, is about 30%. And so we had a $10 million, I'm rounding here for ease, but we had about a $10 million expense budget, and we recovered about $2.3 million in 2023. We were, again, just under a 23%, 22% what I would call cost recovery. And so what that means is cost recovery is the revenue generated. And so that's not a subsidy from some sort of tax. So in the general fund, we recovered about 22%. And so, we're pushing forward with that. And in programming, what Gail's talking about is special populations. If we were to push that up into, it's still a community benefit to do that. And so it would be on the lower tier of what we call cost recovery pyramid. But at the end of the day, financially, they just don't make a lot of money. And so we made a decision to set that at $10, have the foundation back us up. The other thing that they've done is, that was just out there, was we received a grant to train our swim instructors so they can now do adaptive swim lessons next year. So that's kind of how we use that to offset that budget.
That foundation, Gail, at its outset, I recall the conversations. I was sort of in the room as a member of the staff of the chamber at the time, and there seemed to be a pretty confident feeling that you would be able to raise significant money from from well-established systems and companies here in town. Is that proving to be true?
Starting to, Mike. Yes, we are starting to see some large donations from some local companies and local foundations. So that's been an absolute blessing. There's plenty of work there to do yet.
And clearly, I would assume you have a whole range of plans and events aimed at getting that in front of people and encouraging the pony up.
We do. We have at this point one specific event, and that is the Star Spangled Spectacular. We did that for the first time this last July 4th. It went off without a hitch. Was wonderful. We had about 50 teams who built cardboard boats and tried to float them across City Pool. It was a great family event. This next year, we're going to add a corporate focus to that as well, where we'll ask corporations to sponsor and build their own boat and float it across. They'll get to build it ahead of time, so we expect to see some real creativity there.
These were those cardboard ships, as I recall.
Yes.
I remember seeing the social media posts. Those were comical, some of them, right? And
Absolutely.
There were clearly some engineering that went into that. So
yes, and lots of creativity.
Let's talk a little bit about this notion of cost recovery here. And for those of us that that don't think about parks and recreation until we sit down and have a sandwich in the park, right? And then we quit thinking about it when we get back in the car. Help us to understand what that means with respect to the city budget.
So this actually ironically relates back to 2008 and the housing market crisis and how Parks and Recreations had to figure out how to fund themselves differently. It had kind of grown out of this 1970s idea and had really developed in the late 90s, early 2000s, particularly in Colorado, in a company called Green Play that really kind of feathered this thing out of what it was. On the simplest terms, it's revenue generated over expenses. And you develop a percentage. And so you would do different levels of cost recovery. So things that we consider community benefit, like arts in the park, offered at no cost to the community, right? There's a cost to it. We recognize arts and humanities is a community benefit, especially something that's out in the park. No cost. Something in between. A lot of times this is where like youth sports would fall. So there is a benefit to having kids play youth sports. They develop skills, they develop social skills, athletic skills, all these good things that we associate with sports. And so there's community benefit there, but it's also fairly individualistic. You have to play it to get the benefit. So that's priced somewhere in the middle. So you would throw that at, say, a 50% cost recovery. So if it costs us $100 to run, $100 per person to run that, we would recover $50. Then there's individual. Now, we don't necessarily do this here, but this one's an easy one to point to illustrate the example, which would be personal training. Is it better if we're all healthy for our community? Absolutely. But personal training is very individualistic. We would charge over 100% recovery on that. So if it costs us $100, we may charge $150, and that would be an area to make profit. And when you work all this together, it's not that we're recovering all of our expenses. We're chewing into it. The national average is 27%, and that's what I've set for a budget for 2025 for Parks and Recreation is a 27% cost recovery. The best Parks and Recs in the country get to 35 to 40%, meaning if we have a $10 million expense budget out of the general fund, we're going to try to capture $3.5 to $4 million in generated revenue.
We have had on this program purposefully, we're scheduling individual one-on-one interviews with each of the 5 city commissioners. We've had Commissioner Opelt on. Yesterday we had on Commissioner Mata. Next week we'll have Susan Adamchak and Jamie Minton, and then Karen McCullough will join us the week of Thanksgiving. When we talk to them about this, right, the first thing they talk about when it comes to Parks and Rec is, I don't think there's any question that all of the policy leaders in our community understand that it is a significant part of their responsibility as a city commission to help make sure that these services are available. But it always comes down to budget. It always comes down to cost and that sort of thing. So Gail, let me ask you this question. When you think about putting yourselves in the shoes of an elected city commissioner, and you have all of these things you need to balance, how do you want them to think about Parks and Rec?
I want them to think about it in the same manner that Aaron Stewart is thinking about it, and that is running it as a business. However, it is a city service. It is a public service. So when he talks about getting our Parks and Rec department to a 35% cost recovery, we need to support him in that and give him the latitude to do that. So the foundation is a big piece of that, though, as well. The other thing that we want to make sure of is as that cost recovery program gets implemented, that no child or no adult gets left behind in that programming. We don't want families to have to make a decision between a swim pass for the summer or baseball for the summer. We want them to do both. And so financially, the scholarship program through the Manhattan Parks and Rec Foundation will do just that and still make the city whole.
Gail Urban is chair of the foundation arm that is privately held, privately raised monies that augment the city government staff budget line for Parks and Rec. Aaron Stewart manages Parks and Rec. Aaron, this notion of cost recovery and the things that you are designing, you're not reinventing the wheel. These are best practices that are available in communities throughout the country.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, it's funny because one of the reasons I left the area and went to Colorado in 2008 was because they were writing my job out of the budget in Junction City. There was question. So obviously, and as a want to be a gainfully employed adult, I had to make a decision. And so I ended up in Colorado, and I was hired 2 hours before a hiring freeze. And 3 months into it, again, I had just gotten married. My wife was literally living with my parents here. and I'm just frantically worried that, last guy in, first guy out, right? And so my boss finally came and said, hey, you don't need to worry. We're 100% cost recovery. And I go, what is cost recovery? So
on-the-job training.
Yeah. So I learned about that very quickly. And really what it does is it stabilizes the environment. It'll be so interesting to see how much more service we can actually provide when we stabilize ourselves financially. And so all the things that we're talking about, and what the unique thing about the foundation here is a lot of times Parks and Rec just absorbs that scholarship. So it's just part of the budget. Here, the foundation helps make that budget whole, which makes us even more stable. It also allows us to expand to a point and stop putting limits. Right now, there's a $150 limit per family, and that goes away under this model.
We'll talk about indoor water after the break, but before we go to the break, Aaron, let me just ask you to describe sort of the chronology of the policy-making process in terms of this cost recovery and what that might look like in the next however long you think it'll take.
Yeah, so, Move MHK had a section on this, and so out of that, we have developed a cost recovery policy, and I'll be completely honest, I've put a little bit of my own flavor on there, which talks about the entrepreneurial spirit in how we apply this, meaning if we can make money on a program, we go make money on a program, and that's part where the foundation allows access. What's also really important is that cost recovery is one side, the scholarship policy is the other. You can't do one without the other. How this works is we've written up a draft. We'll do a work session to the commission here on the 26th. Depending on what their feedback is, we're looking for a legislative session on December 17th. And if it was approved, we would then begin implementing it in next year.
Fair enough. All right. Our guests are Aaron Stewart. He is the director of the Department of Parks and Recreation for the City of Manhattan, and Gail Urban. Gail is a local business person. She is the owner of Amicus Wealth Partners, a certified financial planner, and in her spare time chairs a foundation that helps augment, raise private sector dollars and augment the city government line item as it relates to Parks and Rec. We're going to talk about indoor water. It's an issue that seems to always be on people's minds in this community. Stay with us. Within Reason will continue here on News Radio KMAN.
This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio KMAN.
November is here, and that means Military Month at Midwest Dream Car Collection. Visit now and explore the rare loaned special display of historic military vehicles and uniforms through the end of November. In recognition of our local heroes, veterans, and active service members, they receive free museum admission all month long. For more information on MDCC Military Month, visit MidwestDreamCarCollection.org.
Spice up your event with Qdoba Catering. Our burrito bowls, nachos, and salads will taste oh so delicioso with juicy smoked brisket and adobo marinated grilled chicken. Fresh fajita veggies and hand-smashed guac will add a burst of flavor to your meal. Place your order today. Qdoba, united by flavor.
Feed your team with a Qdoba Tailgate Pack. Touchdown with our nacho bar. Get your game rolling with a 10-pack of burritos, or snack for the win with chips and queso or hand-smashed guac. Order online or give us a call.
At Meadowlark, every day is game day. Our team is recruiting nurses and certified nurse assistants for full-time and part-time positions in long-term and post-acute care. This game-winning environment is perfect for passionate and dedicated all-star caregivers. Join the Meadowlark team today and take advantage of increased differentials for night and weekend shifts. To learn more, call 785-323-3898 or search online for Meadowlark Careers in Manhattan, Kansas. MVPs work at Meadowlark.
All the way to the goal in the throwdown. Man. He's open for three. Yes! Yes!
A Wildcat.
3 seconds to go. Scoop shot. Yes! And the buzzer.
Be a part of the Wildcat voyage right here.
Now goes back in. There's the lob and the throwdown.
On your home for Kansas State Wildcat basketball.
The Cats play here. 1350 AM, 93.3 and 93.7 FM. This is News Radio KMAN. This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio KMAN.
Our guests are Aaron Stewart. He is the director of the Department of Parks and Recreation for the City of Manhattan, and Gail Urban. Gail is a certified financial planner, owner of Amicus Wealth Partners here in town, and also chairs a foundation that helps raise money to augment Parks and Rec for the city. Let's talk a little bit about indoor water. As I promoted this very specific program in the last few days, I have used the word, this has been a chronic concern in our community. And so, Gail, you've probably more than most people in Manhattan have had your finger on this pulse. Give us a sense, if you can, just generally, how far back this conversation goes and what has happened in those years.
Yeah, Mike, it is a very ripe conversation in this community. As I mentioned, I've been in Manhattan for 26 years, and it was a conversation before I got here, or when I got here. So it's been talked about for at least 30 years. In a variety of iterations, we have studied it and studied it and studied it, and the community wants it. The community said they'll pay for it. We just need to put a vote in front of them and define what it is that we want to build.
Aaron, give us a sense of what are the options when it comes to building an indoor swimming facility. I assume you could do a Chevrolet, a Volvo, or a Cadillac. You could probably do pretty much whatever you wanted in terms of design.
It all comes down to money.
Right.
Generally speaking, the following components should be in there: some sort of competitive swimming area, some sort of leisure activity area, and some sort of diving area. So those are the basic components. Now, what those look like and to what extent they are would drive the cost of that facility.
And right now, I recall the conversation during the 2024 city budget conversation. There was talk of a sales tax. So you guys were getting serious. The proponents of the idea were getting serious and trying to put ideas forward that would help pay for all of this. It doesn't take long, clearly in an election year, for talk of tax increases, regardless of the variety of tax, to sort of bump up against a wall. Did you encounter some of that this year, Gail?
We absolutely did. Being the election year that it was, the community conversations that were happening around city budget for other reasons, the two conversations were not clear in the community's mind, and they weren't clear in the Chamber of Commerce's mind either. So we had some competing community conversations that were frankly just not clear. And so 2025 will be a better year for that conversation.
Aaron, give us a sense of how we in Manhattan stack up on this idea of an indoor aquatic center compared to other communities.
Well, we're behind significantly, about 20 years. So, you talk about these types of amenities and what draws people here. These are the types of things that make people want to come here, make people want to stay here, make businesses want to come here. So, back to your conversation of like how we fit in the overall city budget, and I think what got lost this year a little bit, and it's probably a good reason why we delayed, was the fact that we had a general fund issue with needing to fund the general fund appropriately, and then we had this, and we tried to kill two birds with one stone with pulling recreation out to be a special revenue fund. Excuse me, and then that would help solvent the city fund, and that's where it really got confusing to people.
The city commissioners that we've had on so far publicly talked about this, and again, no one opposes the idea, but they just have difficulty wrapping their arms around how to pay for it.
Yeah.
And so when you just think about just the mechanics of a campaign like this, are you thinking now about how you might want to package all this together and get it in the community conversation, or are we not there yet?
We're not quite there yet. Aaron has some work to do with the commissioners and as far as scope, and once that work is done, then we can start building, specific conversations and presentations and educating the community about how that could look.
Fair enough. Let's talk a little bit about this. I've often heard it described as sort of the chicken and the egg, right? Which comes first in terms of how you build a menu or sort of a portfolio of amenities for the conversation. You guys know there is a significant conversation underway in this community about the idea of private sector job growth, and the argument in essence is we need more bodies, we need more people in town that can pay taxes, that can help pay for some of these things we want. There's another argument that I kind of hear you guys describing, that is, if we build it, they will come. Is that fair?
I feel very
Please.
strongly about this question. So,
Please.
as a businesswoman, this is near and dear to me, and this community needs to grow. We haven't grown. Growth is important. The chamber made that their number one initiative. I think very appropriately so. I think the old methods of tax abatements and those kind of economic development initiatives are a bit dated. Families come to communities where they want to live. And in our current working world, people choose their community. Your kids choose their community of where they're going to find a job and where they're going to live. They don't, as I did, follow a job and live in the community that the job is in. That is not how most young people in today's world go to a community. So they assess the community, they then determine how that's going to fit their family, and then they find the job. I think Manhattan has missed that point.
And clearly that is a cultural shift in terms of American society and the way that jobs are basically dealt with, right? I mean, you don't necessarily have to go to a bricks and mortar building 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. And so help us, Aaron, understand how your industry, publicly funded parks and rec programs, and especially when it relates to indoor water in Manhattan, how does that bump up against that notion?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of research, particularly out of Ball State, about this and what drives this. In particular, what Midwest cities that have been successful have done, and they have invested in their quality of life. Now, what is quality of life, right? We use that term all the time. Obviously, it's parks and recreation, but it's also roads, it's also schools, it's entertainment districts, it's restaurants. And so we're a component of that. So we really need to invest in that. You have no argument out of me based on the past year that we needed to do some work on roads. That's true. And
Right.
we'll need to continue to do that. So we do have to assess priority. But the reality is, if we truly want to drive people here, because again, not everybody's going to a place to work. So if you want them to choose us, we have to give them a reason to choose us. And that's what they're going to do in their downtime. And all the research lends to that versus the tax abatements in the past. And there are some that should be done and still taken advantage of. But take the Star Bond, for example. Take Flint Hills Discovery Center. That thing generates over $3 million worth of economic impact. 76% of the people that visit that place are from out of our area. 80% of the time, they're going to a restaurant, a hotel, or a place to eat, or a shopping center. They're either coming or going. Only 20% either come from home or go to home. And I use placer data to figure that out.
Sure.
So that is a prime example of how economics is driven by that kind of thing.
Aaron Stewart is Director of Parks and Recreation for the City of Manhattan, and he is joined today by Gail Urban, who is a certified financial planner with Amicus Wealth Partners here in town, and also chairs a foundation that helps to provide private sector funding to supplement the city-driven Parks and Rec. Gail, you had mentioned earlier this notion of just how young people make decisions related to where they live, and when you look at the numbers in Manhattan, right? We're so different than we were a generation ago. Military recruitment is down. K-State enrollment is down, right? And so I think that's what drives the conversation about, well, gosh, if we're ever going to get back there, we're going to need more people, and that's what I think drives the economic development conversation. But let me ask you, will we ever get back to those levels, and can we be happy at a smaller level if we have some of these amenities you guys are describing?
Oh, I believe we can, yes. I believe that Manhattan, just as culture historically, if you walk down the street and ask the native folks who live here, how do you like Manhattan? You will always find, I love Manhattan. I love to raise my family here. I was so happy I was able to move back to this area. So people, when you talk to families here, they love it here. However, they will also flip that and say, we could really use an indoor aquatic center. We could really use, better soccer fields. We don't hear that one too much anymore because our soccer fields are pretty darn good now. We used to hear, baseball, our fields are terrible. That's not really true anymore either. We've improved those, and we have more coming on board with a revamped city park, or Seco Park. So some of the things that I've heard as evolution over the years, we have improved. We're just not quite to the level we should be.
These sorts of conversations in a community tend to revolve clearly just around local politics, right? Around the way that the elected people think about these sorts of things, and they ebb and flow, right? This is, if you think about where we were a year ago in terms of the politics of the city commission, and I'm not going to ask Aaron this because they're his boss, but Gail, let me ask you, when you think about the new city commission that we have now, and we have a brand new city manager, right? Aaron's boss has been on the job just about a couple of months, and we're going to get her on this program at some point too. But does that create an opportunity maybe bigger than you might have had 6-8 months ago?
Absolutely. I am completely thrilled with our choice of choosing our new city manager. I've met her briefly a couple of weeks ago. I haven't gotten to spend too much time with her yet, but I have had several conversations with her, and I'm totally impressed with her background. And our new city commission, I'm impressed with them as well. They're doing the hard work.
They are, in fact, and we would encourage our listeners to tune in next week. We'll have Mayor Susan Adamchak on Monday. Jamie Minton will join us on Thursday. Karen McCullough will join us the week before Thanksgiving. We've already had Commissioner Peter Opelt and Commissioner John Mata. Commissioner Mata made news yesterday on this program when he said the chances are he will not run for re-election. Again, more changes, right? That's just sort of the way this thing works. Our guests are Gail Urban and Aaron Stewart, and we're talking about parks and recreation, indoor water, and we will continue that conversation as Within Reason continues. The Trust Company is an independent, locally owned wealth management and investment company founded right here in Manhattan in 1992. The motivation that drives your financial goals, your life, is unique to you and your family. You won't find boilerplate, template-driven, off-the-shelf financial services and strategies at the Trust Company, but plans that are thoughtfully and individually designed, tailored specifically to your hopes and dreams. The Trust Company, locally owned, client-focused. Their only allegiance is to you. Visit thetrustco.com.
This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio, KMAN.
Come on home to West Loop and Manhattan's West Side.
Kia of Manhattan. We want to see ya in a Manhattan Kia. East Highway 24.
Bellis Academy. Your future is waiting.
New Century Bank. Faith gives us life.
Visit some old friends, discover some new. Come home to West Loop and Manhattan's West Side.
At Stormont Vale Health, high-quality care is right around the corner.
Stormont Vale Health is more than just a hospital. We're an essential part of your community. Our commitment to quality healthcare means investing in the most skilled and talented providers and cutting-edge medical technology. Our investment in your well-being doesn't stop there. We also support various nonprofit programs throughout the communities we serve. Visit StormontVale.org and discover how we can serve you.
Stormont Vale Health. High-quality care, closer to home.
Carpet One's new room-by-room displays make it simpler than ever to discover the ideal flooring for your home. Choose from our carefully selected range of flooring options categorized by color, design, and lifestyle. Our team of local experts will collaborate with you to bring your vision to life, providing insights and user-friendly tools to help you select the perfect floor for your remodeling and new build home needs. Come visit us for your next home project at 501 Fort Riley Boulevard in Manhattan, Kansas.
This Saturday is Fort Riley Day at Bill Sutter Family Stadium as K-State hosts the Arizona State Sun Devils. Kickoff is set for 6 p.m. That means PowerCat Game Day, the biggest pregame show in the Big 12, will begin at 2 p.m. PowerCat Game Day is brought to you by Prairie Land Partners, Orthopedic and Sports Medicine Center, Culver's, and the McCain Performance Series. Listen to PowerCat Game Day on 101.5 K-Rock, News Radio KMAN, and online at PowerCatGameDay.com.
There's only one place to go for the best digital advice. That's the Kim Komando Show, every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. with me, America's digital goddess Kim Komando, on News Radio KMAN.
This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio KMAN.
Our guests are Aaron Stewart. He is the Director of Parks and Recreation for the City of Manhattan, and Gail Urban. Gail is chair of a philanthropic arm of the Greater Manhattan Community Foundation that was created, Gail, a couple of years ago as a result of the conversation that we started this hour with, the one at the fire station, when there was genuine community concern about the future of Parks and Rec. Give us a sense of the sort of the evolution of that conversation and what led to this notion that, gosh, there are people in this community that would be willing to donate, so let's just establish a structure that allows them to do that.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. The community was frustrated, and there was a community conversation of controversy, and out of that, there were several community leaders that said, let's fix this. Let's create the vehicle that we can fix this. And that is exactly how the Manhattan Parks and Recreation Foundation was created.
When you think about, Aaron, when you think about just the way that these sorts of amenities are delivered in a community, is it safe to say that the overwhelming majority of what the average sort of layperson would think of as parks and recs programs come through a municipal government? Are there other forms that allow those services to be offered?
Yes. The primary what people are used to is a municipal type level parks and recreation, especially for uses that are low cost, tend to be provided at some sort of subsidy level. When you start getting into the private side, that's when things start to get kind of expensive, and especially if you go towards the for-profit side. So there are different levels offering different services, and so sports is an easy one to identify because they're, especially in Manhattan, which is a very sports-heavy town. People tend to understand that. We see ourselves as kind of the intro to sport. There's another level that's kind of the next level that's in between, and then there's a for-profit level that you would go pay for. So there are various options, and sports is an easy one to point to, but it is in all facets. Art and Light, as a museum, a private entity that's doing that, which is a great quality of life item for our town.
Erin DeGrotto is the exec at Art and Light, and we've scheduled her for this program as well, so stay with us, and we'll have her on sometime before the end of the year. I remember, Erin, during the COVID year, right? At the time I was working at Kansas Farm Bureau, managing public strategic planning and some of their foundation work. And for 90 days, nobody could go to the bricks and mortar, but you still had to get the work done, right? And so I remember taking a lot of meetings in parks. We would sit around a picnic table because that's what the rules said we needed to do. And I didn't think about parks before I'd go there and have business meetings. And so as sort of a consumer of Parks and Rec, I suspect I'm fairly typical. I don't think about parks until I go to a picnic or something, right? So how do you separate parks from recreation, or do you?
You don't. They are one and the same. And in our industry, you have formalized recreation, which would be kind of that structured side. And then there's something called passive recreation. That's hey, I'm going to go walk the trail. Hey, I'm going to ride my mountain bike. Hey, I'm just going to go sit down and hang out in a park. There are all kinds of health benefits. There are all kinds of physical benefits. And there are all kinds of social benefits to doing any and all of these. And so one needs the other. Each of them need both. Recreation often introduces you to those amenities that you didn't know existed because you're interested in some sort of, whether it be a music program or yoga in the park or whatever it may be, that brings you into that amenity that you didn't know existed. Or vice versa, you're walking around the park and you see a program going on and you're like, hey, that looks like fun. I'll go do it. Say sand volleyball. So they both need each other. And to me, they're inseparable.
We had Commissioner Mata on this program yesterday, and he talked a lot about this notion of local government, city government, being that which is closest to the people, and that there is so much that happens at city government just in terms of the services that we as sort of taxpayers will not think about, right? Mm-hmm. And you're describing those now. And so when you think about just the complexity of what government is and does, it doesn't take long for you guys to have a full-time job.
Yeah, so we're one of the fortunate departments that we are out there and we are engaging with the public. And I will often say this, and it's probably a little biased on my part, but I will often say that Parks and Recreation is the face of your city. It's the thing that people engage with the most. The thing you don't want to have happen is you don't want your water to be dirty when it shows up in your house. So those are critically important services that the city provides. And so, but that's kind of sight unseen unless something goes wrong. So for us, we're out front, engaged, and providing that service is what really shows your city off.
We are nearing the end of our time with Aaron Stewart and Gail Urban. And Gail, let me wrap up by asking you this question. We've touched on it in this hour with respect to just the way that policy occurs in a community like Manhattan, and how long those conversations take place, and some of the challenges that are created from misperception and that sort of thing. So what, in your experience, when you think about where you want this community to go with Parks and Rec, what has to happen structurally with respect to this conversation?
Well, we need to continue to have the conversations. It needs to continue to be a priority in our community. So community conversations, Aaron will continue to move the commission forward in policy, and frankly, the community can get involved in the Manhattan Parks and Rec Foundation. We're looking for volunteers all the time. We're in all facets, whether you like fundraising or whether you like to interact with the kids or anything in between. So we are looking for all kinds of volunteers to get involved with our foundation in a variety of ways. So I would encourage people to reach out to me if they are interested, and they can also reach out on mhkparksandrecfoundation.org.
Fair enough. Our guests today have been Aaron Stewart. He is the Director of Parks and Recreation for the City of Manhattan. And Gail Urban, she chairs the Manhattan Parks and Rec Foundation and is a local business individual here who has a business called Amicus Wealth Partners. She's a certified financial planner and has been and continues to be a dedicated community volunteer. So, Gail, on behalf of those of us in the community, thanks for volunteering.
Absolutely.
And
my pleasure.
Aaron, thank you for your service that you bring to our community as well.
Thanks for having me.
We hope that you have learned. So I'm a lot smarter now than I was an hour ago with respect to this, and that's sort of the goal behind Within Reason, is to, as the promos say, dig deeper into community conversations and get a sense of all of the dynamics that are involved in all of these conversations. Earlier this week, we heard from Riley County Clerk Rich Vargo, who unpacked the structure and process of the elections for us and opened our eyes to all the work that he needs to do to be involved with that. Yesterday, again, we heard from Commissioner John Mata. He made news when he indicated that he does not intend. He said, chances are, he will not seek re-election next year. We talked about that this hour with respect to the politics of the community and what needs to occur to keep these things going. Next week, on Monday, we will hear from Mayor Susan Adamchak. It's a one-on-one interview that will continue our process of visiting with city commissioners about all of these things. On Tuesday, we will hear from a Manhattan community leader who recently received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the state of Kansas at the 39th Annual Minority and Women Business Awards Gala. Lisa Sisley is a recently retired executive of New Boston Creative Group. On Tuesday, we will talk to Lisa about her lifetime and her achievements. It's a singular honor, and we're glad to have her in our community, and we look forward to that conversation as well. Wednesday of next week, cattle ranchers from across Kansas will ride into town for the Kansas Livestock Association Convention. They will be gathering at the Manhattan Conference Center and at the Hilton Garden Inn for their annual convention, and we'll have a couple of their leaders in studio to talk a little bit about their industry, the ups and downs, what they're facing, and how important that is to the Kansas economy. Thursday, we'll continue our conversations with individual city commissioners. We'll hear from Jamie Minton. Jamie, of course, was appointed last year to fill the vacancy created when one of our former city commissioners plowed his car through a storefront and then hung him up. She probably will talk about how she intends to look forward to the election year next year as well. And finally, on Friday, a week from today, we will hear from Carla Hagemeister. She is the executive of the Flint Hills Bread Basket. Their mission is to provide reliable access to healthy food, build connections with community partners, and empower neighbors to meet their basic needs. My name is Mike Matson. The program is Within Reason, and you've been listening to us on News Radio KMAN.
Join us for Blueville's Horticulture Hits right after CBS News. Coming up next on News Radio KMAN, Manhattan.